Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on the Spirit of Liberty broadcast. Hope this will be a blessing to you today as we get into a subject that I think is very important. And you might have noticed it's probably not real obvious what I'm talking about just from the title, but it's called Thriving in a System Rigged Against You. And as a Bible believer, and as a independent fundamental Baptist, there are many things that we preach, teach, stand on, practice that are not that common in today's society. There's a lot of things that we teach that people say, you know what, that's from another era. That stuff doesn't matter anymore. You need to get with the program, get with this new era. And we live in a new world today where the patriarchy is bad and feminism is good. And, you need to just get with the program. And as fundamental Baptists, we have no intention of getting with this program. We plan on continuing to follow the Bible. In our church, we still believe in proper gender roles. We believe that the husband is the head of the household. We do not believe in women preachers. That kind of thing gets people really upset and really ticked off. But you know what? While our world does change, the Bible does not change. It still teaches the same thing. And if we do not follow the teachings of the Bible, we're going to have a lot of problems. Things are not going to turn out good, and we're not going to be happy. And so, we deal with a lot of the abuse and the criticism that comes from the world because of the things that we preach that are just unpopular. We still are preaching the exact same thing about perversion, homosexuality, adultery, fornication. That's in the Bible, still preaching the same thing. And man, do we get a lot of grief for that. But we don't care. Okay? We don't care. We're going to keep preaching it. But at the same time, when you understand that we are not living anymore in a Leave It to Beaver type world, where you've got that kind of nuclear family, you've got that husband going off to work, that wife staying home, taking care of the house and all that kind of stuff. That is not the norm. But yet as Christians, that's still the type of life that we try to live. There was a time in our country where that was very normal, where men were the financial providers and where women, they were the mothers, they were the keepers of the home, just like that you see in the Bible. We used to be a very Christian culture, and so a lot of these things were just normal. Everybody did it. But now, not only has our country gotten away from these values, they're actually teaching against them, trying to even shame people that believe this way. And so something that I think is important that we point out is there are some specific challenges that we are up against today. If you want to do things in the biblical way, you are going to have some challenges. You're going to have some things working against you that have not always been around, that the previous generations, they did not have these things working against them. And so we're going to talk about these things, and then we're going to get into some Bible to get the solutions when it comes to what we're supposed to do about it. Because a lot of times we as preachers, and rightfully so, we get up and we say, this is what the Bible says. This is what you're supposed to do. And sometimes, we might deal with the specific challenges that we're up against today. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just tell you, hey, this is what the Bible says, this is how it is. And that's fine, because that's true. But, I think it's important to, go ahead and acknowledge the real challenges that are out there, because I think it helps if people understand that you understand them. Because a lot of people are just making excuses. Because these things are working against us, they use this as an excuse to kind of take shortcuts, to bypass certain things that are in the Bible. So right now, I would like to just go ahead and take a little bit of time to just kind of complain with everyone about some things that we have working against us, especially as Christian men, as men who are trying to follow the Bible, trying to be leaders of the home, trying to be the provider, and raise a family on one income. Let's talk about some of the things we're up against, because I do believe we have a system in this country that's kind of rigged against us, and by design. And I'll talk about some of the evidence for that I don't think a lot of people realize. But let's talk about some of the challenges facing Christian men when it comes to finances. Okay, and so first off, we often get ourselves in trouble of trying to keep up with the American lifestyle with just one income. As Christians, it's like, why is it so much harder? It seems like it's harder for Christians sometimes, to keep up with everybody. Well, there's a reason for that. If you're going to follow a biblical pattern and keep up with the Smiths and Joneses, you just need to understand that's not going to be easy, because the Smiths and Joneses, the husband and the wife are working. And we got to understand, our system that we have in our country today is not designed for you to thrive on just one income. Okay? And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you're going to have to be exceptional today if you're going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to just be like the average guy when it comes to character and when it comes to skills and even work ethic and things like that. You are going to have to be above average, because in the average family today, it's not just the husband working, it's the wife working too. So we're trying to keep up in a system that is designed as more of a one size fits all. And that assumes many things about you that's just not going to be the case if you are a Christian man. So for example, whenever the people are sitting around figuring out the tax code for how we can, when they're trying to figure out how to tax everybody and what people can afford, because they're always trying to think of, and they're always trying to think about the different scenarios. Obviously the single guy doesn't have as many expenses as a married guy. So let's give the married person a bigger standard deduction. Let's give people with children, a child tax credit, and let's give them more exemptions, which they've actually gotten rid of that recently. But they're always coming up with these things in the tax code to try to level the playing field. And because, if you have kids, you have typically this much expense because it costs this much to feed them, house them, all that stuff. But for Christians, all right, if you're like myself, we homeschool our kids. That's extra expense. And it also takes the wife out of the workforce most of the time. So when the government's trying to figure out how much money you need to make, and trust me, they think they know how much you should have. And if you're getting too much, they feel like they should be able to take a little bit more. And it's always because they're thinking about the children. They're thinking about people like me with a bunch of kids and stuff. And that's my business if I have a bunch of other kids. It's not other people in the country's problem. I shouldn't be getting these extra, tax credits or whatever. Just stop taking so much of everybody's money and we'll all be fine. But again, they think they know what I need, but they don't factor in that I'm not sending my kids to the public school system. They don't factor that in too when it comes to my property tax. I don't send my kids to the public school. My kids haven't done a day of public school in their whole life, and I've got 3 that are done with high school, and none of them went through the public school system at all. I've got 5 more that 3 are currently being homeschooled. 2 will be homeschooled. I've got nothing from all the tax money that I've contributed towards the public school. That's not right. But you know what? That's the country we live in. They seized that money from my paycheck. I did not voluntarily give it to them, don't get me going on slavery. We've still got it in this country. When I'm being forced to pay for things that I don't believe in, that I do not benefit from, that I don't want to have anything to do with, and you're going to try to tell me I'm not a slave, all that time I worked, whatever time it took me to work to pay for that junk, as far as I'm concerned, I was being forced to work against my will. That was slavery, and I'm against slavery. Okay? So, you know what? That is what it is. But, they don't factor in, too, that I tithe. And listen, people think, well, I've reported that on my taxes and you get a deduction. It does virtually nothing. Okay? If you report your tithe and your taxes, it does almost nothing. I was a tax preparer. I did that for 1 year. I wanted to learn about kind of how things worked. I wanted to learn how to do my taxes. I went and did a free tax school that they had at a tax preparing company in our local area, and I ended up just for kind of a part-time job and just because I wanted to learn, I did a season doing taxes, and I learned a lot from it. And one thing I learned is that our system is rigged. That the whole point of these tax refunds and all these things that they're doing, it is just how they redistribute the wealth. The tax code is nothing more than just wealth redistribution, and it is meant to help mostly, people who are shacking up and people who are not doing things the way they should. It's meant to help single moms. It's meant to help people who've done everything wrong. And so if you're a Christian, you do things right. You wait until you get married. You as a husband, you're being the provider of the family, your wife's keeper of the home, taking care of the kids. You're not sending your kids to the public school. You're doing all things yourself. The tax code is working against you. And I'm just going to tell you, that's how it is. But you know what? I'm just going to have to overcome it. And that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to overcome it. And so we tithe. I get no tax benefits from that. And so because we are, if you're a good Christian man, because you're focused on your family, we don't work around the clock. We try to, obviously, providing for your family is a major priority. Feeding the family is a priority. But we also want to watch them grow up. We want to be around them. We want to be able to spend time with our wife and with our children. We do honest work. Where there's certain fields we're not going to go into. Ones where you probably could make more money. We're not going to be dishonest. We're not going to cheat we're not going to cheat the system. We're not going to cheat individuals. And so because of that, and it's like even in the tax code, they're assuming you're going to do a lot of these things wrong. And a lot of times, a lot of our tax laws, they're like our gun laws. They only affect the law-abiding citizens. The crooks, they find ways around it. But people who are honest, they're usually the ones that get nailed. That is the way it works in our tax system today. So we've got that working against us big time. So there's financial disadvantages to doing things the Christian way, the Bible way, in this current system in our country. And study the tax code, and you will see it's rigged against us. And it's not right. It's wicked. It is absolutely wicked, some of the stuff that they do and that they promote. I'm disgusted by the IRS and this whole new thing too with the 87,000 new IRS workers. As far as I'm concerned, they've just declared war against the American people. Don't even get me going on that. It's disgusting what's going on in our country, but we keep asking for it. We keep asking for it, and I'm not asking for it, but a lot of our country is. And it's absolutely horrible. And if you work for the IRS, you know what? You make me sick. Go get an honest job. But anyway, another thing too we have working against us, if you are a Christian man trying to do things the Bible way, there's some real challenges. The system is stacked against you when it comes to finding a wife. In our American culture, finding the kind of wife that will be obedient to the Bible, that will be submissive to you, that is going to bear children, guide the house, that's going to do all those things that the Bible says to do. Our country is not promoting that, and we are not turning it out. And you know what? It's not even much of an exception in churches today. It is getting harder and harder to find a woman that has not been defiled. It's just a fact. Bible says in 1 Peter 3:1, likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives, while they behold your chaste conversation, coupled with fear, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair, wearing of gold, or putting on the apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. How often are you seeing women turned out like that in our country today? And if you're a guy looking for them, the system's working against you. There's not too many of them out there. It's hard to find the daughters of Sarah, as the Bible talks about, when it says that she obeyed her husband. She called him Lord, recognizing him as her authority, and the Bible says that, you're her daughters if you're doing the same thing. But the daughters of Sarah are hard to find today. They're out there, but they're hard to find. Our country is not turning them out, and our country, they shame. They shame women that are like that. So the virtuous woman, all right, she's always been hard to find. I mean, who can find a virtuous woman? The Bible says her price is far above rubies. They've always been rare. But I do believe in our twisted, perverted, feminized, American culture, it's even harder than ever. And so, and understand, God expects you men to lead your family according to the scriptures. We don't get to change the rules just because the wife selection is so bad out there. The rules don't change. So thing is, are we just going to give up, because we're in a bad system? Well, I don't think that's the case. So we're going to get into some Bible on this in a little bit. But, let's talk about some more random things that are kind of working against us. If you are a man in this American culture today, and I'm probably going to do a whole program specifically on this. I've done a few specifically on pornography, but I want to do something that's a little more general. That's pretty specific, but I want to do something a little more general, just about lust itself. And one of the biggest challenges with men today is just dealing with lust, and it's a huge problem. Gets men in a lot of trouble. Single men, married men, they're just constantly dealing with problems in the flesh, just with lust. And you know what? It's hard. It's always been hard being a man. Men have always struggled in this area. But you know what? How much harder is it going to be in a country where pornography is everywhere, where pornography is so easily accessible today, when everybody's got internet, computer, phones, when you see how easy women are today? I mean, just women, just no character, ready to give a lustful guy whatever he wants with just no expectations, no requirements. That causes trouble for a lot of guys who struggle with temptation. Temptation is everywhere you look, all over the place. I mean, it's on billboards, it's on every advertisement, it's all over the television, and you just see the way just lust is pushed in everything. And just in the gambling world, isn't it interesting how in the gambling world, in the casino world, and I've never been in a casino and don't ever plan on going into one, but even when you see the billboards for the casinos and stuff, what do they typically have? Scantily clad women. Why is that? Well, because one, it gets men's attention, but at the same time too, if you're somebody who just gives into, the lust of the flesh, you are exactly the type of people they want at the casinos, where they're trying to get your money. And those are literally just the most carnal places on the planet. There's nothing good, there's nothing righteous, and they shove that stuff right in front of you, and it's all about temptation. And they're getting people with it all the time, and we've got casinos everywhere. In our area, town, we don't have like casinos, but we have these slot places and these places where you can gamble everywhere. I mean, they're these gaming places, they've got them at the gas stations. I mean, good night. And so, and just guys these days, and I don't want to get ahead of myself again, just no willpower at all. Just absolutely none. Absolutely makes me sick. And you know what? I get it. Everybody struggles with some things, and I'm thankful I was raised to, hate alcohol, to hate gambling, to hate all that stuff. But, it would be hard if you're somebody that got saved later in life, that you came from that world. Temptation is everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And that's just how it is in this country. We are a very immoral country. And it's hard to be a good, righteous Christian man. Everything's working against us in this country. And this gaming stuff too, that's newer to Illinois. It didn't used to be around. In fact, I think, I might be wrong about this, I think it only started about 10 or 11 years ago. I could be wrong about that, but I do remember, I thought it was right after we started the church when that all became legal in Illinois, and those places just immediately started popping up everywhere. just all over the place. And it's just a shame, and it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment in our area how many of those places that we have. And and if you're poor and you go to those places, I don't feel sorry for you. Okay? You need to get over it. But there's other challenges too, because we live in a society that's full of injustice. Crime is on the rise. There's crime and safety concerns. As men, we're supposed to be the protectors, but yet they're trying to make it harder and harder to get a hold of guns today, making it harder for law-abiding citizens, where not only now do we have the fear of criminals because there's more and more shootings and things going on, but we have the fear of law enforcement coming after us if we don't do everything just exactly right. If we're, carrying our guns somewhere we're not supposed to carry it, or if we, somebody gets offended, people they get so offended by guns. And we have the Second Amendment. You ought to be able to carry that thing. We ought to have open carry everywhere. But you know what? In our state, you have to go get a concealed carry permit. That's ridiculous. And I remember when we went and we did that class, and I'm learning all these laws and hearing all these things. It's like, you know what? I don't know if I'm more scared of running it of the criminals or the government. I think I'm more likely to suffer at the hands of the government if I have a gun on me than I am at the hands of criminals if I don't have a gun. Because you know what? Our system is messed up. And, I don't, it's just, I can't imagine how I would feel if something happened to my family and I wasn't carrying, and I wasn't because of our stupid government, and I was, worried about going to jail by them. So, this is just wrong. It's sad that we even have to worry about that stuff. Today, if something happens, even if it's self-defense, it's clearly self-defense, and you shoot somebody, what they told us there, you're probably going to spend the night in jail. I've never spent the night in jail. I don't ever want to have to spend the night in jail. And if I shoot somebody in self-defense, I should not have to spend the night in jail. But they're going to have a process and have to do all these things. And, better spend the night in the jail than to spend, the rest of your time till Jesus comes in a casket. But either way, that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have to worry about that. But I worry more about our government now doing something to me than I do bad guys, at least in our area. In Chicago, hopefully I get these numbers right. I heard that over 200 minors have been shot this year, 30 some killed in Chicago that has the most strict gun laws. Now, think about that. Why haven't we just declared Chicago a literal war zone when you consider how many people are dying out there? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on in Chicago. Our government is fully in charge of everything. They are fully getting their way in everything in Chicago. And so the place is a nightmare. And, Darren Bailey was right when he called it a hellhole. And people are mad at him for saying that. It's true. And you know why? Because the government has what they want. And it's rigged against decent people. And we have a wicked, oppressive government. We have a government that, the last couple of years, we're going after churches, fighting churches. There's one church out in New Jersey right now. I haven't heard how it turned out, but the pastor's asking prayer. They have another court thing coming up because, they had fines and things, during 2020, during the lockdown and everything. That is not right. That is wicked. And I really hope and pray that all that gets overturned. And it has been getting overturned in most other places. And I really hope it does for them too. But, New Jersey's another wicked place. So, the reality is that many people, they are going to fail when it comes to being the full package as a Christian man. Because the system's working against us. You're not going to be able to just easily waltz through this life and be a person who follows Bible principles. It's not going to come without some extra challenges, because our government is setting things up in a way that is not beneficial for righteous people, that is not beneficial for people who follow the Bible. It's being done and designed in a way for people who are immoral, for people who don't have enough character to get married before they start sleeping with each other and bringing kids into the world. You know, it's messed up. They're trying to force, you know, under the guise of equality, equal outcome. Listen, equal rights does not mean equal outcome. Okay? There's always going to be some things that guys are better at than women. Men are typically stronger. Yes, there's always the exception. There's always the crippled guy out there or something, or, you know, we are turning out a lot of, you know, gamma male types out there, but, you know, men are going to typically be more productive than women. So, you know, they're probably going to do a little better financially. Okay? It's not about equal outcome. It's not going to be that way. They're always trying to force, you know, they have things like affirmative action to force equal outcome for different minority groups and things. It's not going to happen. You know, there's just some groups that are always going to suffer a little more. You know what? And even though they're telling us today that men can have babies, women are always going to have more babies than men. and that's going along with their delusion that men can have babies, and they're going to be better at it. You know, heterosexual people are always going to have less diseases than homosexual people. They're always going to have, opposite sex marriages are always going to do better than same sex marriages. There's just some things that are always going to be the case. No matter how many laws they try to pass to try to help give equal outcome, it's not going to happen. But, you know, in their attempt to create equal outcome, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to make things harder for people that are trying to do right. So, again, and some people aren't going to make it. Now, the question is, though, what about for those people who failure is not an option? Okay? I said all this about how messed up our system is. I recognize that. But you know what? Failure is not an option. I don't want to live a life where I'm miserable. I don't want to live a life where I have a bad marriage. I don't want to raise sorry kids. I don't want to be a bad Christian. So, you know, what are we going to do to make sure that we succeed in a system that's rigged against us? And you know what? We are going to have to be better than your average person out there today. Okay? Now, listen, boy, you know, sometimes, you know, we preach so hard and so often, and rightfully so, on how easy salvation is and how it's not of works, that, you know, it's like people forget that, hey, yes, we preach you get saved without works, but you know what? You don't make it in life. You're not going to be a successful Christian. You're not going to have a good marriage. You're not going to be a good father unless you have some works. You've got to do the work. You've got to be obedient to the Bible. And you can be saved and, you know, and still have a crummy marriage, and you can be a failure at life. You can fail at raising your kids. But, you know, so the thing is, you need to go to a church where they teach salvation right, but where they also teach that you ought to do some stinking works. And we have got to be better than this world that we're living in. We've got to have higher character. And I'm tired of, you know, being around lost people who have better character than Christian people. And I have worked with many lost people that have way more character, way more integrity than a lot of saved people I know. And that makes me sick. I find that revolting. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't care if you're saved. I don't care if you have intellectually accepted the most hardcore position when it comes to being a father and a husband and whatever. If you are of sorry character, you are going to fail miserably in life. Your marriage is going to be horrible, and you're going to be a horrible husband. I don't care what you say. I don't care how much you pound your chest. You are going to be a failure in life, and I have pity on your wife and on your children. And so let me just show you a few things, because again, in the Bible, we have plenty of examples of people who they overcame against all odds, who thrived in a system that was clearly against them. And one example we can look at in Daniel chapter 1. Okay, in Daniel chapter 1, we have Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These were Hebrew children who were taken captive. They were taken captive by the Babylonians. These are a wicked people. They do not serve the God of Israel. They have laws that are contrary to the God of Israel. They are taken against their will. They are made eunuchs. They're forced into serving the king. And you know what? These guys still took a stand, and they wouldn't defile themselves with the king's meat. They still kept following the Jewish laws that God had given them for their diet. They still followed those things. And you know what? These men were successful in Babylon. It says in Daniel 1:18, now at the end of the days that the king said that he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of Cyrus. So notice these guys, they're 10 times better than everyone else. They're 10 times greater in wisdom. These were men of character. These were men of wisdom. And in a system that was far worse than what we have in this country, in a system where they are in captivity, these guys thrived. You know why? Because they had some character. That's why. Not because they had just mentally declared themselves something. No, these guys actually had character. These were guys who had actually followed through on things. That when they were threatened, when they had temptation put before them, they said, we're not going to do this. And we see they continued to live that way. Later, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what are they doing? They're not bound before the image. Didn't matter. Everyone else was doing it. These guys didn't do it. And you know what? They were willing to die for that. Daniel, same thing. He didn't start praying 3 times a day when they made that law. He was already praying 3 times a day when they made that law. And you know what he did when they made that law? He just kept doing what he was always doing. He didn't start up something new. These were men of character. And we've got a lot of Christian men today who they hear preaching about husbands being the head of the home. And then all of a sudden they declare themselves the head of the home. They declare themselves the authority over their wife. And you know what? I'm going to be the sole provider in the family. And my wife is going to be a stay-at-home mom. And she's going to homeschool our kids. And then all of a sudden the wife is like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm a feminist. I want to go get a job. I want to make money like everybody else. Or they'll try to declare all those things, and maybe the wife goes along with it, but then the guy can't make enough money to even support the family. And then everybody gets discouraged, everybody gets upset, and then maybe the wife does give up, and then the guy acts like, it's my wicked wife. It's this wicked system working against us. It's so easy for people to get divorces today. Well, you know what? You got to understand, yes, it is going to be so easy for your wife to leave you today. She'll probably get alimony. She'll probably be able to take the kids. That's a system that we have today. It always works against the guy in child custody battles. I'm sure there's examples out there, but I've never even heard of a woman paying the husband alimony. It's probably happened somewhere, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to be that man. I wouldn't want to admit I was the guy. But at the same time, yeah, the system's working against you, but you know what? We need to overcome it. So you're going to have to be better. You're not going to be able to be pathetic. You're not going to be able to be just a loser. You're going to have to be better. We see, and we're not going to take time to read through all the story. Another great example of somebody who thrived in a situation where everything was working against them was Joseph. In Genesis chapter 39, it says, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him with the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. That's not what he wanted. That wasn't right. The system was working against him. He shouldn't be a slave, but yet he's a slave. But you know what? It says the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And you know the story. Joseph, he had so much character that, even though he was in a bad situation, he didn't pout about it. You know what he did? He worked hard, and he was prosperous, and God blessed him. He was such a man of character. When he's being tempted by Potiphar's wife, he did the right thing. And yes, bad stuff happened to him as a result. He got lied about. He got thrown into prison. But did you know that when he was in prison, that the Bible says that the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison? And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever he did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that he did, and the Lord made it to prosper. He even prospered in prison. And so you know what? This guy who had character, who kept doing the right thing, even against, in a system rigged against him, where he was sold by his brethren, where he's lied about by a wicked woman, while he's in prison, he still succeeds. And eventually, what does God do? God brings him out of prison and puts him over the kingdom. You know the story of Joseph. But let me tell you, that didn't happen to a guy who was just saved. It wasn't just a guy who just had salvation. He was a man who had character. He was a man who loved the Lord. He was a righteous man. And that guy did good. And listen, if you are going, is the way our country is going today, if you're going to raise good kids, if you're going to have a good marriage, if you are going to make it and succeed, you will have to be exceptional. You will have to be 10 times better than the others, like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were. Or you're going to have to be somebody with the character of Joseph in order to be successful. And this attitude of I'm saved and I have accepted the most hardcore position, it's not going to work if you are not a person of character, if you are not exceptional, if you're not somebody who's going above and beyond, somebody who is doing the works. And we've got a lot of guys, and let me just get specific when it comes to some things I'm seeing in people who, again, they think because they do a Facebook post about how hardcore they are, because they share a sermon where somebody's yelling and hollering about husbands being over the wife and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden they think they're like Mr. Hardcore IFB Christian. But yet you look at these guys' lives and their wives are miserable, their kids are miserable, their marriages stink, they don't last, and yet these guys still go out and they pound their chest. It really blows my mind. But listen, and then what they do is they complain about the government. They complain about the system. And let me tell you, I have no intention of stopping when it comes to complaining about the system and the government. But you know what? I am not going to let them dictate the outcome of my life. And that's what these guys have done. They're using all those things as an excuse. But you know what? Some of us see right through it. And the truth is, even in a horrible system, if you will just be a decent Christian, you could still do good. You could still do okay. It's not as bad as it was for Joseph. It's not as bad as it was for Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We don't have it that bad. But understand, we do have it, some things working against us. And you might not be 10 times better than your average American, but you know what? You probably need to be at least twice as good. Maybe 3 times as good. And you can do that. If you have the Holy Spirit in you, if you will actually follow the leading of the Holy Spirit, you can do it. But you know what? We've got guys today, and it's apparent in your character. Okay? I mean, everybody sees this, but yeah, you don't see it with yourself. We've got guys who they verbally declare these ultra hardcore positions about being the head of the household, all that stuff, while being a punk and a thug. You dress like a thug. You dress like a gangbanger. What is wrong with you? You show up, they'll show up to a job interview dressed up like a punk. And then they wonder why they can't get a good job. It's because they had to fill their quota on hiring more women, and hiring more homos and things like that. So I didn't get a chance. The systems were rigged against me. Well, yeah, some of that stuff does affect things, but if you wouldn't have showed up for that job interview with body odor, you might have had, better chance of getting that job. That's the real problem. And I'm sick of seeing Christian guys dressing like gangbangers and then wondering why things aren't really going their way. Listen, when I see you dressing like a thug, you're telling me something about yourself. You can tell a lot about, and I'm just gonna tell you this right now. People could probably get mad at this, but this is true. You can tell a lot about, based off how someone dresses, the kind of music that they listen to. And let me tell you, if you listen to rap music, you're not going to have a good marriage. You know why? Because that music, that lifestyle, it glorifies violence, it disrespects women, and guys who listen to that stuff have the same problems. That stuff's going to rub. I don't care what position you declared for yourself. I don't care what you posted on Facebook. I don't care what sermon you liked on YouTube. Okay? If you're a gangbanging type, you better believe that's going to affect how you are towards women. And it shows in how you dress. I can tell by the way you don't fold the bill of your ball cap, by the way you sag your britches, just by the type of clothes you wear. You're always wearing your sports jerseys and things, while at the same time, it's clear you would have no idea what to do. If somebody threw a basketball to you, or a football, or a baseball. I think you are just a gangbanger and a punk and a thug. And I think the reason your wife left you was not because of feminism. I think it's because you treated her bad. I think it's because you didn't give honor to her as under the weaker vessel. I think that's what the problem is. And and unfortunately, you do. You have a lot of these feminist groups that are out there that do a good job of, appealing to these women who are in abusive relationships and things, and then winning them over, to their feminazi ways. But, the truth is, women who are married to good men who take care of them and treat them right, they don't fall for that stuff. But your wife did, because you stink. That's the real reason. And so, you're not succeeding not just because the system's rigged against you, and it is rigged against you, but also because you're a punk and a thug. Another reason too, let me just say this, not trying to be mean, but you've got these guys who, again, they verbally declare these hardcore positions on things, especially some of these single guys. You got these young single guys declaring these hardcore positions on things like, you're going to be the head of the house, you're going to be the sole provider and all these things, and you're stinking out of shape. I mean, you look like you shoot up every morning with soy. You look like you spend all your time hanging out at Starbucks, on a laptop, playing, games on your cell phone, something like that. I don't know what it is about Starbucks, but I think they're putting something in their drinks that's really feminizing these men. It's absolutely nuts. And yet so I'll see this guy out of shape, clearly has no self-control, no discipline at all. Yet because he listened to a sermon with his ear, because he shared it, because he typed up a hardcore, he thinks he's like all that, Mr. Super Christian, and he's going around on Facebook and on social media, and he's like bashing people and he'll go after some man because his wife has a job or something, even though they've been married 30 years, even though she already raised kids and they're just doing it because they want to, and even if you don't like that, if you think a woman should just never have a job and never ever be outside the house, until you make one happy, why don't you keep your mouth shut? Okay? And especially too, when it's clear these guys have no character, just none at all. And I'm getting tired of watching guys online rebuke people who, even while they were saved, I'm not even talking about before they're saved, while they were saved, they were out knocking girls up, and yet because they have an intellectual position on something that's hardcore, that doesn't require any character to hold that position, they feel like they can go around rebuking people. And let me tell you something, there's a lot of positions that you can take on things that require no character to maintain that position. Okay, any man, especially when you're single, it requires zero character from you to hold a hardcore position when it comes to a woman's role in some area. It requires zero character for you to have a hardcore position when it comes to raising children when you don't have any children to raise. It requires no character at all. Yet you're going to go out there and you're going to go rebuking people that are actually doing it, and a lot of times getting the job done. And maybe they're not doing it perfect. Maybe they're coming short in some areas, but yet you really think you are in a position where you can rebuke somebody, just because of an intellectual position you have that requires no character at all to have that. You've just, in your mind, this is my position, and now I'm Mr. Hardcore Super Christian. I'm not falling for that, not impressed. So, you got guys, so the thing is, again, the system's working against you. You think you're going to be successful, you're going to have to be somebody who have character. You're going to have to be somebody who's who looks decent, who can, takes care of themselves. You can't just be some, out of shape, unless you're just really smart. Some people, again, some people, they're older, some people got a lot of things working against them. But no, when you are young and just immediately, you're in your early 20s and you already are just a pile of flab, okay? There's something wrong with that, okay? Everybody, when they get older, things don't work right anymore and stuff happens. But I'm sorry, these younger guys doing that, and it seems like you guys are the worst ones out there running your mouth. Just have the character to shut up. You got people that are uneducated. Hey, listen, in this system that's worked against us, it's getting harder and harder to make money and be able to provide with one income. And, you can't just blame the system. You know what? You might have to go get some education. You might have to go actually learn something. And I don't think you need to go to college. I've taken a position against college. Okay, fine. But it doesn't mean you have to be stupid. You could still go learn on your own. But a lot of these people that act like they got this hardcore position against college are also people who are really stupid too. You don't have to go to college to be smart. You don't have to go to college to learn something. There's all kinds of ways that you could learn. I'm just concerned about you because you don't seem to know anything. And you seem like you have no ability to learn anything new. And then you wonder why you're not going to be able to succeed. But if the only skill you're able to learn is to work in a drive-thru at McDonald's, just, good luck being able to support a wife and a whole bunch of kids. I want my wife to we're going to have a whole bunch of kids. Big family. She's homeschooling all of them. It is not easy to support a large family in this world, especially with grocery prices the way they are. It is not easy. And so the thing is, if you're going to be able to make the money to do that, you're going to have to get some education. You're going to have to gain some skills. You're going to have to go learn a trade. You're going to have to work really hard. These are the things you're going to have to do. But yet, uneducated guys declaring an intellectual position on something and then acting like when everything fails in their life, it's because the system is working against them. And again, I'm sorry. I've seen it even recently with out of shape, divorced dudes who dress like gangbangers out there running their mouths on social media. They're like the full combination of all these things. Dressed like a gangbanger, out of shape, divorced. And I'm going to guess some of these guys are probably unemployed too. I don't know. I can't imagine people of that character having a job. And if they do have a job, they probably haven't had it very long, and it's probably not a very good one. Because people with that kind of character, they don't hold down decent jobs for very long at all. But boy, these people are quick to run their mouths and just be punks on social media and stuff. Really blows my mind. Just no real character. They're lazy. Good for nothing. I go soul winning. Good. I'm glad you go soul winning. You can be lazy and good for nothing and still be able to be a soul winner. Good job. But that's not going to make you a good husband. It's not going to make you productive. It's not going to help you provide for your family. It's a good thing. I think everybody ought to do it, for sure. But you know what? You got these guys that are all these bad things that we're talking about, but then they just, well, I'm going to put the soul winning at the top of the list. And as long as I'm that, then I'm better than those people who are all those other things under me. I guess if you make the rules, you can, and you make up the way to keep score, there's always a way to make yourself look like a winner. But the truth is, when you can't succeed in marriage, raising your children, just basic decency and character, I think you're a failure across the board. And, I'm glad you still go soul winning. That just, that's just a reminder of how easy it is for people to get saved. That God can use somebody as sorry and pathetic as you to get somebody saved. So, so the thing is, being a punk, a thug, out of shape, uneducated, no real character, lazy and good for nothing. There was a time when we had a system where you might be able to be a bunch of those things, and your wife was probably going to stay with you because society frowned on divorce, and it was hard to get divorced, and especially hard to remarry after that. We had a better financial system. Things were better in a lot of ways, but that is not the world that we live in today anymore. There was a time you might have been able to get away with being pathetic, but listen, in 2022, you cannot be these things and succeed as a husband, as a father. It's not going to happen, and it's getting worse. Folks, our world is getting worse. Our laws are getting worse. Our leadership is getting worse. Our tax code is getting worse. I'm not seeing anything in this country get better. Nothing. I'm seeing us head straight for Babylon. And so you know what? Right now, maybe we only got to have twice the character as your average person. But you know what? It's probably getting closer to 3 times or 4 times. And pretty soon, the only people that are going to make it are those who are 10 times better. And so the thing is, let's go ahead and acknowledge what we're up against. Okay. And I left some links to a series I did in Sunday school back in April for Family Month, where I talked about the cost of a Christian home, the cost of a large family. I talked about all these things because there's stuff that people aren't taking into consideration. You are not just going to accidentally have a good, strong family. Not in this country, not in this culture. It's not going to happen. You've got a plan for it. And as we see our country going down the toilet, you just got to understand, you're just going to have to step up your game. You're going to have to get even closer to God. You're going to have to be even of stronger character. You're going to have to become more and more educated. You're going to have to become more and more skilled. And dads, you need to keep this in mind too. You might have been able to get by with little education, with few skills and all that kind of stuff. You might have been able to, but you know what? Your boys aren't going to be able to. Not with the world that's coming up for them. So you've got to make sure you really instill these things in them, really instill some character, a good work ethic, educate them as much as you can. And guys, you just need to understand that just because you have male anatomy, and just because you succeeded in conning some dumb female into marrying you, just understand that she's probably not going to act like Sarah, a daughter of Sarah, while you're being completely worthless. That's probably not going to happen today. And you're gonna have to step up your game. And so, really, what this was all about, acknowledging what's going on, but just encouraging everyone to have some character. You've got to step up your game. You better get close to the Lord than you ever have before. You need to be better than the people that you work with. Okay? Wherever you're working, wherever your job is, don't just, try to be with the average. No, you need to be above average. You need to be better than them, because that is what it is going to take. And especially as our economy just goes down the toilet more and more, the longer Biden's in, I don't know how we're going to survive 2 more years. But you know what? People like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they do good no matter where they're at. And if you are a person of strong character, you'll do good no matter what. I'm not saying if you're saved, you'll do good no matter what. No, you need to be saved and you need to have good character. So anyway, might have been a little bit mean in this, but I think I probably held back a little bit, just trying to lay out some truth to you. And I hope it was a help and a blessing. Appreciate everyone watching. And we will see you all next week. God bless.